Well, good morning, everyone. You are looking at a live view of Site 1A at the Vostochny Cosmodrome in Russia, where Roscosmos is preparing to fly the fourth ever test flight of the Angara A5 vehicle. We are at T minus 30 minutes and counting. If it's your first time here, welcome. My name is Zach. I'm the founder and host here at the Launchpad, and here at TLP, it's our mission to inform and inspire the explorers of tomorrow because we believe that space is better together. And thank you so much for joining us. If you haven't yet, take a moment, engage that like button, share out the stream, invite people to join us, and take a moment and let us know in the chat where you're watching from. We got Daniel from Sydney. I see Poland. I see Sammy's in the USA. We got Arthur in Netherlands. Bishunu, sorry if I'm saying that wrong, is in India. David's in bed. Great place to be. We've got Thomas in Austria. Great to have you here. I see Serbia, Russia as well. I see California. I see Utah, North Carolina, France, Germany, Belgium. Great to see so much of the UK and Europe tuning in this morning for what is the second launch attempt of the Angara A5. You may have joined us yesterday when they tried to launch this at the same time. We do have an official statement on the reason of the scrub yesterday that occurred at that basically 1 minute mark. The Angara A5 launch attempt was scrubbed earlier today due to the failure of the URM-1 oxidizer tank pressurization system. The launch was canceled automatically, and teams are reviewing the data. And we are here again 24 hours later for another launch attempt. The tower has been retracted away. Roscosmos decided to go live 30 minutes later than they did yesterday, so we're getting a little bit less view of the pad in advance during that tower opening sequence, but that's okay. We're still here and still thrilled that they are still going to show a bit of today's test flight, as Russia doesn't show too much these days. As I said, if you guys have questions, you can send those in the chat by tagging us at the launch pad, and I'll work on answering those live. A little bit more that we know about today's mission. Today's mission is, as I said, the Angara A5 vehicle. This will be the fourth flight of this launch vehicle, but the first ever flight of it from the Vostochny Cosmodrome. Now, you may not have heard of this vehicle before. That's okay. This is its fourth test flight since 2014. On December 23rd, 2014, it launched for the very first time from the Vostochny Cosmodrome at Site 35-1 on its first test flight with no payload on board but a mass simulator, which was a successful flight. Now, they had a huge break and did not launch Angara A5 again until December 14th of 2020, 6 years later. Again, had another successful test flight. On December 27th of 2021, which I believe we may have live covered or not, it was actually my birthday that day, we had the third test flight of the Angara A5 and the final flight of it from Site 35-1 at the Vostochny Cosmodrome. This flight was ultimately, though, a launch failure. It was the first ever flight of their Persei upper stage, and it was scheduled to be the last of their 3 demo flights. Unfortunately, that Persei upper stage failed to restart for its secondary burn, which left the upper stage and the payload in low Earth orbit. Now, the payload on there was a mass model of a geostationary payload, and it was a dummy model, but when the dummy payload was not deployed into the correct orbit, it was technically a failed mission. So here we are today. We are looking at a live view of Site 1A at Vostochny Cosmodrome in Russia, where we are T minus 26 minutes, 17 seconds and counting till a fourth test flight of the Angara A5. There is no payload on board today, but there is a new version of Persei called Orion, a new upper stage that has been placed on this vehicle that we will hope to see be successful here today, deploying nothing into geostationary orbit. There's no dummy payload. There is no payload. They're just testing the launch vehicle here today. The Angara A5 Block DM-03 is a heavy lift launch vehicle that is capable of carrying over up to 23,000 kilograms to low Earth orbit or 5,400 kilograms to GTO. The three-stage launch vehicle, standing 55.4 meters tall. That fairing that you're seeing on the right side there peeking out, it's a very large fairing, standing 15.2 meters tall, 4.35 meters in diameter. This vehicle has four strap-on boosters on the side and produces over 9,610 kilonewtons of thrust at liftoff. The estimated cost is $100 million per flight. And to give you an idea, comparing this to the Delta IV Heavy that we saw fly for the last time from the United States yesterday, that cost over $400 million per flight. Roscosmos does have a very long list of Angara A5 flights that they plan on launching in the future, as they are waiting for this new heavy lift launch vehicle to come online. Some of those include, in the very near future, the first ever flight of the Ross module. This is the core module that originally was headed to the International Space Station, but will now be deployed as the core module for the Russian Orbital Service Station, Ross, in a sun-synchronous orbit at 98 degrees, officially kicking off another history of Russia having their own somewhat international space station, as some other countries are expected to be allowed on board. That is scheduled to launch in 2027. In 2028, using the Angara A5, they will also launch the first ever Angara carrying the Orel spacecraft, which is an uncrewed test flight of the spacecraft that will, in a few years following, launch crew to the International Space Station, the Ross Space Station, or beyond. In 2029, they plan to conduct their first lunar sample return mission with the Angara A5, followed by crewed flight tests of Orel and more lunar sample returns into the early 2030s. So this is a very important vehicle for Russia. It will launch not only satellites, but space capsules, lunar rovers, lunar sample returns, and even a telescope to the L2 point, similar to James Webb, out to that L2 Lagrange point with a space telescope. So a very important vehicle for Russia that they want to see successfully fly here today. If you guys have questions, you can keep sending those in the chat. If you're just joining us, you are looking at a live view of Site 1A at the Vostochny Cosmodrome in Russia, where Russia is preparing to fly the Angara A5 on a fourth test flight, the first ever flight of it from the Vostochny Cosmodrome. Weather looking a little hazier than it did yesterday, but we'll hopefully be able to still see a really good flight here today. We do not have any idea of what we will see coverage-wise, as it is Russia. They don't normally share a lot. But we are hopeful that we will see some incredible onboard views here today, at least confirm a successful deployment of the second stage, or the upper stage, maybe even fairing deployment. So we'll have to wait and see what happens, and we will know just 22 minutes and 20 seconds. Cooper the dog's asking, at the launch pad from yesterday's Delta launch, could the side boosters be recovered by parachute? In theory, anything can be recovered by a parachute. It all determines the structural capacity of them and how much weight those parachutes are adding to the vehicle. Any weight you add to the vehicle makes it less effective. Also, where you're adding them changes the aerodynamics of the vehicle, which can also make it less effective as well. So we'll have to wait and see what happens. But unfortunately, the Delta IV Heavy and really the entire Delta program has now been retired as ULA moves on to Vulcan Centaur. But it is something similar to SLS, not SLS, Space Shuttle. The SRBs did come back down and splash down, so there is a way to do it. It just is not something that was used on Delta IV Heavy, and it only flew 16 times in 20 years. So interesting to see. Lots of people just jumping on. I see Japan, USA. I see Buffalo, New York, Columbus, Ohio, New Zealand, Italy, Charlotte, North Carolina, Germany, Perth, Australia, Denmark, Hungary. Great to have you all joining us here live. T-minus 20 minutes, 55 seconds and counting till launch. As I said, if you guys have questions, you can keep sending those in the chat by taking us at the launch pad, and we will work on answering those live. Minus 20 minutes, 30 seconds there. Roscosmos shares everything on their Telegram, even more than NASA. Well, do they, though? They do share quite a bit when they want to. If it's especially a crewed mission or something to do with the space station, they share a lot. They do share some of the operations of getting their vehicles ready. Excuse me, been a long night with Starlink. They do share some of that information, but they do not share near as much as NASA, which is a publicly funded government organization, which is legally required to, unless it is classified or ITAR, release it to the public either automatically or via public request forms. So I don't think anyone is as transparent as NASA, because NASA legally has to be. But we'll wait and see, and hopefully we'll see Roscosmos open up more. We do love to cover them and bring you a full coverage of not just the U.S. launchers, but launch companies all over the world. Excuse me, very sorry about that. So these questions coming in about what fuel mixtures are being used today. Well, the boosters on the Angara A5 are the same as the core stage of the first stage. It's the URM. Each stage is powered by a single RD-191 engine, which can produce 1,920 kilonewtons of thrust at sea level at maximum point of thrust, and can burn for 310 seconds, achieving about 3.047 kilometers there. The the propellants used is RP1 and liquid oxygen for the first stage and those boosters, as they are all identical, similar to Delta IV Heavy. It had 3 stages on the first, but it was the same. The second stage, the URM2, is also an RP1 and a liquid oxygen part of the vehicle. It is powered by a single RD0124A engine that can burn for 359 seconds. And then looking at it, there are some optional third stages depending on what they need to do. They have the Briz M, which is powered by a singular S5.98M engine, which uses a mixture of dinitrogen peroxide and unsymmetrical dimethylhydrazine. An interesting compound there that you're more than welcome to look up. There's also an optional third stage called Percy or Orion. That's what we're seeing at launch today. That has a singular RD58MF engine, which uses RP1 and liquid oxygen. Can burn up to 3,000 seconds. And currently under development is the KVTK, which operates with an RD0146D engine that uses liquid hydrogen and oxygen. So they have some different options depending on where they want this vehicle to go and what it's carrying to get to its set orbit. T-minus 17 minutes, 15 seconds and counting if you're just joining us for the 4th test flight of Angara A5 and the first ever test flight of it from the Vostochny Cosmodrome. Serenity, what's the mission and payload? It's just a test flight. So this vehicle has flown 3 previous times since 2014, 2 successful flights with no payload on board but a dummy mass. The 3rd time it flew, it did have a failure of the upper stage, which was the first ever time it flew with an upper stage. So we're back here again with a different upper stage, and there is no dummy payload on board. There's no real payload on board either. They are just trying to prove out that upper stage before they begin launching actual operational missions. Time for some coffee. But great question. Thanks for sending that in. If you guys have questions, you can send them in the chat by tagging us at the launch pad. Just make sure you're doing that tag. It helps us out. Also, while you're doing so, take a moment, engage that like button, share out the stream, invite people to join us as we sit back and watch hopefully some history of this test flight be successful, bringing a new heavy lift launch vehicle online, which would be absolutely fantastic to see, as we do believe that space is better together. Catching up on the chat. Dawn is watching from Thailand near Cambodia border. Welcome. Great to have you here. Peter's watching from Tasmania. Looking forward to see this broomstick fly. Timestamp, first Angara launch from this site. That is correct. Absolutely. And Xi Jinping some nasty chemicals. Yes, one of those ones that I read out is definitely not a chemical compositions that you want to be around at any time in the near future. The liquid oxygen or the RP1 and those type of things, definitely far more common. Just catching up on the chat here today. We are monitoring the current wind conditions around the launch site. They are a lot higher than they were yesterday, so we will be monitoring that to see how well the countdown timeline progresses over the next 14 minutes. I am going to patch in the raw mission feed now. So you're going to be hearing the live sights and sounds from the launch pad. So we're at T-minus 14 minutes and counting till launch. Nomad 77, what kind of payloads will this thing launch? That's a great question. It will be launching a wide variety once it's brought online, including a crew capsule to the International Space Station, possibly. It may move those flights to their private space station. It will launch the first core module, and we expect future modules of the Ross space station, which is a Russian space station, which will be in orbit following the International Space Station. That's first module, supposed to go up in 2027. It will also launch a telescope out to the L2 point, similar to the James Webb Space Telescope, as well as numerous other heavy mission vehicles. A Russian YouTuber brought some UDMH and was doing some experiments in his home lab and burnt down his whole house and lab. That's very unfortunate. I hope he's okay. Yes, you do not play with rocket fuels in your house, even if you have an opportunity to get your hand on rocket fuels. Don't do it. Not safe. Even with us we're very honored to have, a Starship tile, and, we've had other opportunities for other space items. Anything flown you have to be very careful with, and then anything to do with rocket fuel you have to be very careful with. Your health is priority one, and though some launch vehicles are generally safe, like Falcon 9 and Soyuz, they're safe because we know how to be around them. They're not safe because they're safe vehicles. There's very specific rules and regulations on how to be around these vehicles before and after launch, so you definitely have to be careful. And Serenity, thanks for putting that in there. I'm trying to make sure I say that. L2 is Lagrange point 2, which is a point in the solar system between the Earth, the Moon, and the Sun, where some of the gravity is a little bit different, so a telescope stays there a bit easier. So it's a designated point, and that's where we deploy the James Webb Space Telescope. So it's a great spot there because of the gravity. It helps keep most of the meteorites away and different things as well. So it's a much safer spot. Terry, doesn't seem like they're worrying about cloud cover. They don't, depending on the flight. Soyuz, they've launched in perfect weather all the way to a blizzard. So it really all depends on the vehicle that they are launching and what they're hoping here. As I said, they've launched the Angara A5 3 times previously. And with that, having launched 3 times previously, they are more confident in the first stage of this vehicle. All 3 times this thing has flown, the core stage and the 4 boosters have worked nominally. It has only been the 3rd flight, which is the first ever flight to carry an upper stage, or sometimes in the States we call it the 2nd stage. That was the first time it had a failure. So really, as long as nothing's changed, they know the core stage, they know their boosters. we're testing the upper stage, and that's what they're working on here today. Leo Lex, I worked on Angara 1.2 Stage 2. I was a contractor. My work flew into space on the first flight of this rocket. That's awesome. Well, welcome, Leo Lex. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks for your work as well. Everyone's work that goes into any of these vehicles, no matter what country they're for, is super important in helping us become multiplanetary species. If you're able to, Leo Lex, we'd love to hear from you. If you can send us an email or contact us through our Discord or our Twitter or something. If you're ever open to an interview or something, we'd love to hear, especially since that flew over a decade ago. I'd love to hear what, if you're allowed to, what you worked on and things like that. So definitely love to hear from you there. If you're just joining us, welcome. You are looking at a live view of Site 1A at the Vostochny Cosmodrome in Russia, where we are at T-minus 9 minutes, 27 seconds and counting for the fourth test flight of the Angara A5 launch heavy lift vehicle for Russia. If you haven't yet, take a moment, engage that like button, share out the stream, invite people to join us as we continue to count down to launch. We are listening in to the raw tech feed for today's flight. We are keeping a close eye also on the official commentary feed, but it is in Russian, but we'll listen into that a little bit closer to actual liftoff for those final moments of the count. But we're keeping a close look on the tech feed, which we do hear any announcements that come across the mission control net. On board today, there's no payload, there's no mass simulator, it is just a test flight of the Orion upper stage. The previous flight that launched in 2021 unfortunately did have a launch anomaly with the upper stage not igniting for a secondary burn. T-minus 8 minutes, 25 seconds and counting till launch, fueling well underway for the vehicle. Very similarly to Delta IV Heavy and Falcon 9, the Angara A5's first stage has a singular core booster. This one, though, separate from Delta IV Heavy and Falcon 9, has 4 boosters attached to the side that are the same as the core stage, rather than just 2. That is a heavy lift launch vehicle. Bob the Turtle, I agree, they need to get one of those Rexies on this. That would be amazing to see Rexy launch into space. For those that know, gotta love a good Rexy. Long hair, is this to test the rocket or the GSE? Test the rocket. So testing specifically the upper stage of the rocket. We do know what the bottom stage is and how it operates, but they're testing the upper stage, but ultimately they're always testing the GSE and the lower stage as well. But they need to prove out the upper stage so they can actually start flying payloads and other missions. It has a large track record, a large backlog of missions currently scheduled. It has 16 missions currently scheduled to occur by 2030. So we've got 16 missions in 4 years. That means this thing needs to fly, at least 2 to 3 times a year. Oh, things will always slip, so 2 to 3 times a year, which is quite frequent for a heavy lift launch vehicle. When you think of Falcon Heavy, it only flies it now, recently, 2 to 5 times a year on the schedule, realistically 2 to 4 flights a year. So the Angara A5 is very much going to be like a Falcon Heavy, where we see it probably every 2 to 4 months with a flight. Nomad, how's my Russian? Not great, but we can figure it out. We can always get a translator. If you're just joining us, T-minus 6 minutes, 10 seconds and counting till the 4th test flight of the Angara A5 launch vehicle. If you have questions, you can send those in the chat by tagging us at the launch pad, and we will work on answering those live to the best of my ability. Long Hair is asking, will the Oriole capsule launch from Vostochny? If I'm remembering correctly, that is their lunar capsule. We're confirmed on that, but we believe it would launch from this vehicle, at least on some test flights to see. Mars, I got to see the Delta IV Heavy at the airport while I was waiting to catch Delta Airlines. That's awesome, Mars. I guess technically it's not the end of Delta. We have Delta Airlines. And yes, this pad is brand new for this vehicle. That is one of the reasons why this is a test flight. So, for the question of is this a test for the GSE, it definitely is, but it's gone through testing. T-minus 5 minutes and counting till launch. If you haven't yet, take a moment, engage that like button, share out the stream, invite people to join us. Dawn, love your narration. Thanks so much. I appreciate that. Try to bring you the information of what we know and not fill it with a lot of fluff so we can all enjoy those views of the rocket. That's why we're here, and we would only get to do this, me and our entire incredible team, because of your guys' incredible support. If you'd like to support us, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Just watching, liking, sharing is a huge way of supporting us, but if you are interested in doing it financially, you can hit that join button down below. It turns your name green. You get a helmet next to your name, and it's just 99 cents a month. To start, and you get access to our custom launch emotes, which we'll be using very shortly, as well as there are other options if you'd like to upgrade your membership to get more support and go behind the scenes here at the launch pad. All of that goes into upgrading our equipment, expanding our team to bring you better coverage, getting them on the ground. We had people on flights to the solar eclipse, cover it, and back on airplanes within hours to be able to rush back for Delta IV Heavy. Hotels are not cheap. It all goes into bringing you the best possible coverage, not only in the United States, but around the world as we work to expand our team. Another way you can support us is join our crew. We believe that space is better together. We are conducting interviews starting this week, so if you're interested in joining as a launch commentator, a journalist for our new up-and-coming launch news website, a researcher, maybe you want to be a moderator, maybe you'd like to help with the shop, there's lots of places, positions, and some that are even brand new that we've never opened before. Consider taking a moment and filling out an application, and stay tuned to be reached out to if we think we'd like to have an interview with you. We try to sit down with everyone, get to know their heart and their passion for space, because we really do believe that space is better together, and there's a place in space for everyone. T-minus 3 minutes and counting till the fourth flight test of Angara A5. As always here at the launch pad, in those final minutes of the count, let's see that go, no go in the chat. If you are a TLP member, don't forget to use your custom TLP launch emotes. If you were just joining us yesterday, this flight did have a last-minute abort at the 1 minute mark due to what is believed to be a failure of the URM-1 oxidizer tank pressurization system. It was canceled automatically by the vehicle, so we're hoping we don't see that again here today. T-minus 2 minutes, 20 seconds, and counting. At this point, we're going to listen in to the Russian feed for commentary. And here we go. T-minus 2 minutes and counting till launch. Countdown now in the top left corner of your screen. T-minus 1 minute, 50 seconds. Countdown continuing to proceed nominally. The vehicle now in terminal count. T-minus 90 seconds to the fourth test flight of Angara A5. T-minus 80 seconds. This is where we had the hold called yesterday. It looks like the clock is continuing to run. T-minus 70 seconds. T-minus 60. T-minus 40. If you're just joining us, you're looking at a live view of Site 1A at the Vostochny Cosmodrome in Russia, where Russia is preparing in just 30 seconds to launch the fourth ever test flight of Angara A5 with an all-new upper stage. That should be about T-minus 20 seconds. Let's listen into mission control as they attempt to launch Angara A5.
Выдана команда отмена пуска. Руководителям работ подготовиться к 24-часовой стоянке. Первый.
Есть подготовиться к 24-часовой стоянке.
And it does appear that we have had a abort on the flight for the second launch attempt in 2 days of the Angara A5 vehicle.
Ну что же, вы смотрите прямую трансляцию пуска ракеты-носителя Angara A5 с космодрома Восточный. Только что мы узнали о повторной отмене сегодняшнего пуска.
With that, it does look like they will be most likely wrapping up the fail today. That did look to be actually a similar event to what that we saw happen yesterday when they had a issue of the vehicle. That is going to do it for the second launch attempt of Angara A5. Roscosmos doesn't waste any time ending their live streams, just poof, done. But we will be back here tomorrow or whenever they go for another launch attempt of the Angara A5. If it was your first time here, though, welcome. My name's Zach. I'm the founder and host here at the Launchpad, and here at TLP, it's our mission to inform and inspire the explorers of tomorrow, because we believe that space is better together, and we were thrilled to have you here for our live coverage of the second launch attempt of Angara A5. We've got lots of launches coming up later this month, so make sure you're subscribed so you never miss another live launch coverage, and join us over on the TLP Discord, because that's where our community hangs out in between streams, and consider applying to join the TLP crew if you too want to help inform and inspire that next generation. From our TLP remote studio currently in the UK, my name's Zach, and we'll see you next time, because space is better together. Have a great day.